Hey guys, hopefully everyone is doing well. Today's target is to solve next part of 13.27. The chapter which we are related with is leverage in capital structure, managerial finance by Lawrence Gitman. As you can see that this question 13.27, this was having a length and we were supposed to solve several parts, and in single part we were having several subparts, and this was your first part which has been solved for debt equity ratio 0, and you have calculated three different income statements for different probability capital structures. Then you have calculated EPS. In the similar way you have calculated second part where income statements of three different probabilities were calculated, and then EPS of three different income statements were calculated. So up till this level we have completed our question, and how many parts we have done we will review it. Look, there were three probabilities, point 0.3, point 0.4, point 0.3, and capital structure was consisted of six different levels. 0% debt ratio, then we were having 15% debt ratio, and then we were having 30%, 45%, 60% debt ratio. In this way we have completed just two parts. 0% debt was completed, and then 15% was also completed. We will now be doing 30% capital debt ratio. For this, instead of writing everything again, what we will do, we will copy these headings, and this would be used to make our third part. Over here we are doing third part, and everything would be altered. These inputs were related with previous part, let's delete them, and earning per share was also related with previous parts, let's delete them, and this main statement. This is very important to know what we are going to do. Let's read third option, and this is your third option where you have to create 30% debt equity ratio. So our ratio would be altered, debt equity will be 30%. So obviously the total capital structure over here is 1 million, and out of this 1 million we have 30% debt. So multiply by 30 divided by 100. We have got 3 lakh as our debt. So instead of 0, this debt would be converted as 3 lakh. Okay, and if 1 million is total capital structure and in this we have 3 lakh as our debt, how much would be the equity? Obviously for that purpose what you will do, total capital structure 1 million and 3 lakh is consisted of debt, then remaining part 7 lakh would be your equity. So let's change it down, 7 lakh equity. So our problem has been sorted out. This was the major difference between previous parts and the part which we are solving right now. And we have mentioned it, it would be very easy for us to calculate interest and other calculations. Let's start our first income statement for point 3 probability, where your level of sale is 6 lakh. So let's start our income statement with 6 lakh. Okay, next step is to calculate our variable cost, which is 40% of sales. Amount of sales 6 lakh, and you will calculate 40% by multiplying 40 divided by 100. So we have got our variable cost. Contribution margin is now open to be calculated, which is difference between variable cost and sales. Okay, here a bracket is needed to be put. I was just wondering why sale is written over here. So it was actually 40% of sales. Contribution margin, difference between variable cost and sales. To calculate this difference, you will write sales will subtract amount of variable cost to 40,000. So we have got our contribution margin. Then in question, this fixed cost 3 lakh would remain same and it would not be altered for any part. So again we have 3 lakh as our fixed cost, after which we are open to calculate EBIT, earning before interest and tax, by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin. 3,60,000 your contribution margin, and you will subtract fixed cost, which is 3 lakh. So we have got earning before interest and tax, after which we will calculate amount of interest, for which we will go to the third option. Okay, third option, here you have 30% of debt, where your ratio is 10%. Yes, it looks like 10%, little blurry, but I'm very hopeful it is 10%. So come to the question. Here we will mention that ratio is 10%. In this way, 10% would be applied for all of our calculations. Interest would be calculated, and since interest is directly associated with amount of debt which has already been fixed, and look over here, debt amount is 3 lakh. So this debt amount would be the main source of calculation of interest. You want to take 10%, multiply by 10 divided by 100. In this way, amount of interest has been calculated. Now earning after interest would be calculated by subtracting interest from EBIT. 60,000 amount of EBIT, subtract amount of interest 30,000. So we have got 30,000 as income after interest. Tax would be calculated right now, for which we need previous income, that is 30,000. Tax rate is given in your question, 40%. So we have got our tax. Earning after tax would be calculated by subtracting amount of tax from previous earning. 30,000 previous earning, amount of tax 12,000. So we have got our earning after tax 18,000. Since no preferred dividend is present in our question, so earning available for common shareholders is very simple. We will subtract preferred dividend from previous earning. 18,000 previous earning, preferred dividend null. So we have got 18,000 earning available for common shareholders. At the similar time, we can now calculate earning per share for first part, for which we need earning for common shareholders, and that is what we have calculated right now, 18,000, and you need to divide it with number of shares. For number of shares we will get back, and number of shares are not copied. So this way we will calculate our number of share, for which we need, okay, for which we need our amount of equity and per share price. Look in question, per share price 25 is given over here. You can see that book value is 25 per share. Equity we have just decided in this part. This is our third part. Equity is 7 lakh. So here number of shares would be calculated 7 lakh amount of equity, and it would be divided by per share price, which is 25. Statement is completed, and now we can calculate. So 28,000 is number of shares. Earning per share would be calculated by dividing net earning available for common shareholders, and it would be divided by number of shares 28,000 we have just calculated. Statement finished, and you are open to put it on your calculator. So we have got our EPS 0.64 for 30%. First EPS has been calculated. It's really enjoyable when you are doing your work in this way, presentable form, and everything is according to the sequence. Point 4 is the next chance where your sale is 9 lakh. Here you will put 9 lakh as your sales, and then 40% is your variable cost, which would be applied upon sales. 9 lakh amount of sales multiplied by 40 divided by 100 would be your variable cost. Alright, now contribution margin can be calculated by subtracting variable cost from sales. 9 lakh amount of sales, subtract variable cost, which is 3,60,000. So we have got contribution margin. Now fixed cost, it would remain same for every part. Look over here, 3 lakh. It was your fixed cost. No matter what percentage is, what portion of question we are doing, fixed cost will never be altered. It would remain same in a particular period of time. EBIT is open to be calculated by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin. 5,40,000 is your contribution margin, and you will subtract your fixed cost, which is 3 lakh. So 240,000 net margin. Interest would be calculated because in this case we have debt 3 lakh, and percentage is written 10%. Just calculate. So we have got our amount of interest. Earning after interest can be calculated by subtracting interest from net margin. So 240,000 was your net margin, subtract amount of interest, which is 30,000. So we have got 2,10,000 earning after interest. Tax would be calculated right now, for which we need previous earning 2,10,000, which is earning before tax. We will apply our rate of tax upon previous income. In this way, tax would be calculated. Earning after tax can be calculated now by subtracting tax from previous earning. 2,10,000 previous earning, amount of tax 84,000. So we have got earning after tax. No preferred dividend is present. So finally we are at the stage to calculate earning for common shareholders. It would be calculated by subtracting preferred dividend from previous earning, 126,000 earning after interest and tax, and you will subtract your preferred dividend. So we have got our final earning, after which it's time to calculate your earning per share, for which you need earning available for common shareholders. We have just calculated 126,000, and it would be divided by number of shares, for which we will just copy it from previous part. Number of shares would be calculated by taking equity, and this equity would be divided by per share price. Equity would be divided by per share price. So we have number of shares 7 lakh. In the same way, for this section, as you know that range of equity would not be altered. Your equity for this whole part, that would be shared by first probability, second probability, and third probability. We will have same number. So equity is 7 lakh, and it would be divided by 25. It means same amount would be present for per unit price 25, same, and same equity. So we have got 28,000 as number of shares. These number of shares would be put in our formula for EPS, where earning available for common shareholders was put, and number of share we have just calculated 28,000. So we have got our statement to calculate EPS 28,000. In this way we have got our second earning per share, which is 4.5. Second statement completed, second EPS is completed. Please note it down. These answers are absolutely your required answers. Note it down. When you will practice, you can see these answers as your references. Alright, next is the chance of 0.3 probability. Last one. For this part, we have 12 lakh as our sales. Over here, you will be posting 12 lakh. Here, variable cost would be calculated. Rate is given 40%, for which we need sales. Amount of sales 12 lakh, and 40% is your variable cost. After which contribution margin would be calculated by subtracting variable cost from sales. 12 lakh amount of sales, 4 lakh 80,000 is your variable cost. So we have got contribution margin 7 lakh 20,000. After which fixed cost would be put, and as usual in question 3 lakh is fixed cost, no matter what proportion or portion of question you are solving, what option you are using, your fixed cost will not be altered. It would remain same 3 lakh. EBIT is opened to be calculated by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin 7,20,000 CM contribution margin, and you will subtract your fixed cost 3 lakh. 4,20,000 is your earning before interest and tax, and now we will calculate interest. Look, debt in this case is 3 lakh, and 10% rate is given in our question. So we have got 30,000 amount of interest, after which we are open to calculate earning after interest by subtracting amount of interest from EBIT. 4,20,000 EBIT, subtract tax 30,000. So we have got earning after interest. So tax would be calculated as our next step, for which we need previous income 3,90,000, and you will apply 40% rate of tax upon previous income. Huge amount of tax 1,50,000. After which we can calculate earning after interest by subtracting tax from previous earning. 3,90,000 earning before tax. You will subtract tax to get an income after tax. No preferred dividend is present, so finally we are staged to calculate our earning available for common shareholders by subtracting preferred dividend from earning after interest and tax. 234,000 previous earning, and you will subtract preferred dividend. We have got our earning available for common shareholders. So we are now open to calculate EPS, earning per share, for which earning available for common shareholders 234,000 we have just calculated, needed to be divided by number of shares. For number of shares, as you know that your number of shares would be shared for all parts of this section. As you know that equity is mentioned at start, that we have 7 lakh equity, and per unit price 25, it was mentioned in your question. Look, read it down. Stock has 25 per share. In this way, 7 lakh equity, 25 per share price, we have got number of shares, and these number of shares would be put in previous formula to calculate EPS. What we need, earning available for common shareholders, and it would be divided by number of shares. Statement has been completed, and we can now put it on our calculator. So third EPS has been calculated, which is 8.35, or you can rounded off as 8.36. So part number third we were solving, and three income statements we have made. As you know that in this question we need to solve 5 parts. 3 parts are completed and we will now be looking forward for 45% capital and debt ratio. This was your third part, and obviously we are hiding these headings present over here. All of these headings would be used to make calculations for our next part, and that is fourth part. Since headings are just hired from previous part, so every amount present over here is unnecessary to be written over here. We will remove them and we'll start our next part. In the similar way, earning per share was also unneeded now. Let's delete them. Similarly, your number of shares are not needed over here, and we will change this starting statement again. Last statement we have made for 30% debt ratio, and our next statement after 30% is 45% debt ratio. So guys, we will start this part by taking 40% of debt. First change we have made, and now we will calculate how much would be the debt. At this stage, as you know, your capital structure is 1 million, and you will take 40% as your amount of debt. Rate was 40%, and how we have taken this is 45%. Okay, thankfully we have seen it again, and it is 45%, and you are needed to change this as well. It was 45%. I have shared you for so many times. These are live lectures and no interruption, no editing. Absolutely what I am saying to you, these are the same words which you will listen when you will be looking or viewing this lecture. So no editing, no interruption, no changes. 4,50,000 would be your debt. Let's change it. 4,50,000. So now we are in need to calculate our equity. As we know that 1 million 1 million was your amount of capital structure, out of which we have decided that 450,000 we will arrange through debt. So remaining part would be arranged by ourselves, 550,000. So we need to change this capital structure for as well. So in this way your debt has been changed. Now 45% part of capital structure would be your debt, and here it was mentioned 45%. And obviously when 45% is your debt, remaining part would be arranged by owners themselves. So 550,000 would be considered as your equity. Again we are making three different income statements, 0.3, 0.4 and 0.3 probability. First is 0.3 probability, where your amount of sale is 6 lakh. So let's put 6 lakh over here, after which we will calculate our variable cost. Rate is given in the book. You will apply 40% upon sales. Amount of sales 6 lakh, and you will calculate 40%. Variable cost has been calculated. Contribution margin is open to be calculated, and for this you will subtract your variable cost from sales. Amount of sales 6 lakh, you will subtract your variable cost to 40,000. So we have got our contribution margin. For fixed cost, it has been discussed that 3 lakh is your fixed cost. Though you have seen several income statements has been made 4 parts you have solved, but fixed cost would not be altered. It would remain same for a particular period of time, 3 lakh. EBIT now we can calculate by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin. 3,60,000 contribution margin, fixed cost is 3 lakh. So we have got earning before interest and tax as 60,000. Amount of interest. Okay, interestingly, we will see that our debt amount has been changed and it would be 4,50,000. Please note it down. Our amount of debt has been changed for fourth part. 450,000 is total amount of debt, and we need to see the rate as well. Okay, for this portion of your question, 45% debt equity ratio, the rate is now 13%. So next rate would be 13%. It is little blurry, I have to see it. So 13% is your rate. So why not we should change it. So 13% is your rate of interest, and over here you will apply this 13% upon debt. In this way, amount of interest would be calculated. Now we are ready to calculate our current earning by subtracting interest from EBIT. 60,000 earning before interest and tax, and you will subtract amount of interest. It means we have our earning after interest 1500. This would be the earning which we will use to calculate our tax. Rate is 40%, previous earning 1500. So you will apply 40% as rate of tax. 600 is your tax. Earning after tax would be calculated by subtracting tax from previous earning. 1500 your earning before tax, and you will subtract tax 600. We have got earning after tax. No dividend similarly in this part as well. Now we are open to calculate earning available for common shareholders by subtracting preferred dividend from previous earning. 900 earning after interest and tax, and you will subtract preferred dividend. So we will have earning available for common shareholders, after which we are now able to calculate earning per share, for which we were in need to have earning available for common shareholders. We just 900 earning available. We need to put number of share for which equity would be used. For this part, our equity is 550,000. We have just calculated 550,000, and you need to divide it per share price, which is 25. It is given in your question, and as usual I will let you see 25 per share price was given in your question. Statement is completed. Now you can put it on your calculators. So we have got our number of shares 22,000. Per share price was 25, and that was used to calculate your number of shares. These number of share would be used to calculate EPS. Oh, I didn't mention over here. This is your EPS, for which what we need earning for common shareholder. 900 was just recently calculated. Earning available for common shareholders. Number of shares we have now calculated. Those are 22,000. Statement is completed, and now we are open to put it on our calculator. So we have got our first EPS, and that is 0.04. And the part number 4 we have started. First section has been completed. First income statement for 0.3 probability has been completed. For second probability it is 0.4, and we have sales 9 lakh for this portion. Let's put 9 lakh at this stage. Variable cost would be calculated by applying 40% rate upon sales. 9 lakh amount of sales, multiply by 40 divided by 100. So we have got our variable cost 40%. Now contribution margin would be calculated by subtracting variable cost from sales. Your amount of sale 9 lakh, subtract variable cost 3,60,000. So we have contribution margin. Fixed cost is given in your question, that is 3 lakh, and it would not be altered, would remain same. For any section, for any part, for any proportion, for any percentage, this fixed cost would not be altered. How good is to learn the concept of fixed cost or variable cost. As you can see that we have made several, I think it's 12th income statement, but we haven't changed fixed cost. So next is EBIT, which would be calculated by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin. 5,40,000 contribution margin, and you will subtract your fixed cost 3 lakhs. We will have our EBIT. Now interest would be calculated, which is 13%, and it would directly be applied upon debt. 450,000 amount of debt we have just calculated, and 13% would be applied to calculate your amount of interest. So current earning would be calculated by subtracting interest from EBIT. 240,000 your earning before interest and tax, and when you will subtract interest, you will get earning after interest, which would be used to calculate our tax rate. Is given in the question as 40%, previous earning 1,81,500. So here you will calculate 40% as your amount of tax. Now we are open to calculate earning after tax by subtracting tax from previous earning. 1,81,500 income after tax, and you will subtract tax to calculate our earning after tax. No preferred dividend is present, so earning available for common shareholders would be similar. If you will subtract your preferred dividend from previous earning, 1,08,900 earning after tax, and you will subtract preferred dividend, you will get your earning available for common shareholders, which would be used to calculate EPS. Earning for common shareholders 108,900, and you need to divide it with number of shares, for which we need to divide equity by per unit price. Equity in this section was 550,000, we have just decided, and this would be divided by 25 per share price. It is mentioned in your question, look over here, 25 per share, and you will be putting this 25 over here to calculate number of shares. So 550,000, it would be divided by 25 to get number of shares 22,000, and this would be used to calculate EPS. Statement is completed. 108,900 amount available for earning available for common shareholders 22,000, your number of shares 22,000. So we have got our EPS for fourth part 45%, where is your debt equity ratio. This is your next part, fourth part, debt equity ratio 45%. Second statement you have calculated, and please note it down. For second income statement, your EPS is 4.95. So guys, we are now open to make our third income statement. Probability is similar, 0.3, and we have 12 lakh as amount of sales. So let's put this amount of sales over here. We are free to calculate variable cost because 40% of sale is needed. As sale has been mentioned 12 lakh, and you will calculate 40% of sales to get your variable cost. After which contribution margin can be calculated by subtracting variable cost from sales. 12 lakh amount of sales and variable cost is 4,80,000. So we have got our contribution margin. Next step is to put 3 lakh, and you know that 3 lakh is fixed cost mentioned in the question. Without any alteration, you will write 3 lakh, same which we have used for all income statements. EBIT is now open to be calculated by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin. 7,20,000 your contribution margin, subtract fixed cost to get your earning before interest and tax. And now it's time to calculate your interest. As you know that 4,50,000 is your amount of debt we have just calculated, and rate is 13% given in your question. So we have got our amount of interest. And now earning after interest can be calculated by subtracting interest from EBIT. 4,20,000 earning before interest, subtract interest to get your earning and income after tax. So we are now open to calculate tax 40%, for which we were in need to have our earning before tax 3,61,500. We will apply 40% rate upon it to get our amount of tax. Now earning after tax would be calculated by subtracting tax from previous earning. 3,61,000 earning before tax, subtract tax to get your income. After tax, no provident fund. It means earning available for common shareholders when you will subtract your preferred dividend from previous earning. 2,16,900, no dividend. So we have got our earning available for common shareholders, which will be used to calculate our earning per share. 2,16,900 is amount of earning available for common shareholders. Next we need number of shares, for which we need equity. Equity was mentioned over here. How? Because 45% of debt and remaining amount 550,000 was your equity. So here 550,000 would be put, and price per share 25. It was mentioned in your question, 25 per unit price. So here you will be putting 25. Statement is completed. Now let's calculate amount of number of shares, or number of shares. Now we have 22,000. So let's put this 22,000 in previous formula, where earning per share is being calculated by dividing earning available for common shareholders with number of shares. Statement is completed. 2,16,900 would be divided by number of shares 22,000. So we have got our third earning per share 9.859 or 9.86 can also be considered. So what we have done, 4 parts are completed out of 5. As you know, we have to calculate 5 parts. 45% debt equity was calculated, and next rate is 60% of equity. As usual, what you will do, we will use these headings as it is to calculate all aspects of next part. Since statement is similar, so instead of putting time to write down, we are using these headings. This is your 5th part. Okay, at this stage these numbers were related to previous part. Now we don't need them, so let's delete them. Similarly, earning per share was also for the previous part, remove them. And number of share we have calculated was for previous parts, let's delete them. It's time to change our statement heading. It was 45%, and you know 60% is our next proportion of debt equity with 17% interest. Rate debt equity ratio is 60%. So over here you will change, instead of 45% it would be 60%. Let's calculate amount of debt over here. As you know, our total capital structure was 1 million, and you will calculate 60% to know how much amount of debt. 6 lakh. Let's change it. It is now 6 lakh amount of debt. Then what would be the amount of equity? There are only two element involved in capital structure, equity and debt. If out of 1 million, 6 lakh is debt, then how much amount would be for equity? 1 million was total capital structure, out of which 6 lakh is amount of debt and remaining amount is 4 lakh. That would be arranged by owners and equity would be equal to 4 lakh. When you have changed it, another change is required for this 60% equity. 17% is cost of debt. That means rate of interest is 17%. So we need to change this rate as well. Here you will calculate 17%. So in this way our performa is ready to calculate. Everything has been altered according to requirement of fifth part. Now we will see how much sales for fifth part, and you can see that first sale for point 30 is 6 lakh, and since we are calculating fifth part, first sales is, I forgot, 6 lakh, and you will put amount of sales over here 6 lakh. Okay, after which we are open to calculate variable cost, which is 40% of sales. Amount of sales 6 lakh, and you will calculate 40% to have our variable cost. Contribution margin, now we can calculate by subtracting variable cost from sales. 6 lakh amount of sales, and you will subtract variable cost, which is 240,000. By subtracting it, we will get our contribution margin and fixed cost. As you know that in question it has been mentioned 3 lakh. For all of our part, this fixed cost would not be altered, and you will write 3 lakh in place of fixed cost. EBIT can be calculated right now by subtracting fixed cost from CM. Amount of contribution margin 3,60,000, and you will subtract your fixed cost 3 lakh. Interest now would be calculated. This is interesting because we have changed our debt equity ratio. Now debt is 6 lakh. Alright, put 6 lakh over here, and you need to calculate 17%. As you can see, we have changed the ratio. Amount of interest calculated 102,000. Now earning after interest can be calculated by subtracting interest from previous earning 60,000, earning before interest, and you will subtract your interest 1,02,000. So first time negative earning is appeared, minus 42,000. So strangely you have changed your capital structure with which your earning, instead of getting profit, you are now facing loss. So here you will apply your tax rate, which is 40%. If your earning before tax is minus 42,000, you will apply 40% tax rate. After calculation of tax, you can now open to calculate your earning after tax by subtracting tax from previous earning. Minus 42,000 previous earning and minus 16,800 is amount of tax. So we have got our earning after tax. No preferred dividend is present. So we can calculate right now earning available for common shareholder, previous earning minus preferred dividend. We have got earning available for common shareholder, which is actually loss due to negative sign. We are open to calculate EPS by putting earning available for common shareholder, which right now is minus 25,200, and you need to divide it with number of shares, and number of shares would be calculated by taking equity first, and you can now, okay, this sign would disturb us because it is minus, so we need to change it. So let's put, look, please understand these inverted commas are just to make this statement as alphabetic statement, not a numerical statement. In this way, Excel will not pick it as an amount. It is just statement. So we need to calculate number of share, for which we need equity, and that would be divided by per share price. So here we have our formula, and equity was calculated before starting this part. 4 lakh now would be your equity. It has been changed, and you need to divide it per unit or per share price, which is 25. And I am sure that you remember it. 25 per share is mentioned in your book. So in this way you can calculate your number of shares. 4 lakh was amount of equity, per share price 25. We have got number of shares 16,000, and these numbers would be used to calculate EPS. 16,000 number of shares we have calculated, and now we are open to calculate our EPS by putting this statement on our calculator. So we have got minus 1.575 or minus 1.58 can also be considered. So look at here, negative earning instead of getting profit. Now each shareholder will have to face loss. For every share 1.575 is your amount of loss for single share per share. Point 3 part was completed, probability, and point 4 probability we are starting, for which your sale price was 9 lakh. So come over here and put your sale price as 9 lakh, after which you are open to calculate your variable cost, which is 40% of sales. Amount of sales we have imported 9 lakh, and you will calculate 40% to get your variable cost. Contribution margin is now possible to calculate by subtracting variable cost from sales. 9 lakh amount of sales, subtract variable cost 3,60,000. So we have got our contribution margin. Fixed cost, as you know that there was no need to show you. 3 lakh is your fixed cost, and we will write 3 lakh happily over here because it would not be altered for any case. EBIT is now open to be calculated by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin. 540,000 contribution margin, subtract fixed cost, which is 3 lakh. So we have got our earning before interest. Now interest would be calculated. As you know that our capital structure has been changed and our debt is 6 lakh. So just put 6 lakh over here, and you will calculate its interest. Rate is given 17%. So multiply by 17 by 100, we have got our amount of interest. Now earning after interest can be calculated by subtracting interest from previous earning. 240,000 earning before interest, subtract interest to get your earning after interest. Tax would now be calculated. Previous earning 138,000, and you will put 40% rate upon it to get your tax. Earning after tax, now we are open to calculate by subtracting tax from previous earning 138,000 earning before tax, subtract tax to get your earning after tax. No dividend is present in your question. It means your earning available for common shareholders, that would be calculated by subtracting preferred dividend from previous earning 82,800 earning after interest and tax, subtract preferred dividend to get your earning available for common shareholders 82,800. This earning would be used to calculate your EPS, for which what we need to have number of shares as well. Let's calculate number of shares by dividing equity to sale price. Equity just mentioned over here has been changed as 4 lakh. Put over here, and you need to divide it with per unit price or per share price 25, and you are well aware of the fact that this 25 is given in your question. So after putting amount of equity, we are now open to put per unit price 25. 4 lakh was equity, divided with 25, we have got 16,000 per share price. It was very possible to just copy from here to here. But when you will be writing this upon your paper, you will not be able to copy. So that is why I am doing everything manually. Number of share we have just calculated 16,000. All right, and now we will calculate our earning per share by dividing earning available for common shareholders with number of shares 16,000, and here number of shares were 16,000. So we have got 5.175 as earning per share for second part. So thankfully each part is being solved in a very smooth way. We have point third, point 3 probability last, and sale amount is 12 lakh. So here you will put your amount of sales as 12 lakh, after which variable cost would be calculated. Rate is given 40%, and you need your sales, apply 40% upon sales, because it was mentioned in your question, take 40% of sale, it would be equal to variable cost. Now contribution margin is open to calculate by subtracting VC from sales. 12 lakh amount of sales, variable cost for 80,000, so we have got our contribution margin. At this stage we need to put our fixed cost, which is mentioned in question, 3 lakh, and as you know it would not be altered for any part of the question, so you will write 3 lakh. Similarly over here, after putting fixed cost, we are open to calculate EBIT by subtracting fixed cost from contribution margin. 7,20,000 previous earning, you will subtract your fixed cost to get your EBIT, earning before interest and tax. So previous earning contribution margin 7,20,000, you have subtracted your fixed cost to get your EBIT, earning before interest. Here you will calculate your amount of interest, which would be calculated through debt. 6 lakh is your amount of debt, and you will apply percentage, which is 17% given in your question. Amount of interest is calculated. We are now open to calculate our current earning by subtracting interest from previous income. 4,20,000 earning before interest, you will subtract interest from it to get earning after interest. With the help of this, we can calculate our tax. Our previous earning 3,18,000 is available, and you will apply 40% rate to get your tax. Earning after tax will be calculated by subtracting tax from previous earning. 3,18,000 is earning before tax. You will subtract tax to get your earning after tax. No dividend is present in your question. So it means you can now calculate your earning available for common shareholders by subtracting preferred dividend from previous earning, 1,90,800 earning after tax, and you will subtract preferred dividend to get your earning available for common shareholders, which would be used to calculate our EPS. 190,800 divided by number of shares would be calculated by dividing equity with per unit price. Equity was just calculated as 4 lakh. You can see that we have already mentioned it. 4 lakh is your equity divided by 25 per share price is mentioned in the question. Look over here, and we have seen it for so many times. 25 per unit or per share price was given in question, and you have taken it. So amount to calculate number of shares, equity divided by per unit share price, we have got 16,000. So this 16,000 number of shares would be put in the formula to get our EPS. Statement is completed. We are now open to put it on our calculator. So we have got our last EPS 11.925, or it may be called 11.93. So guys, have you seen that there were 5 parts? How? Because we were having 3 different probabilities, and we were having 5 different options of capital structure. So these 3 probabilities were used for each capital structure. So for first 0%, was your debt equity ratio, 3 income statements were made. In the similar way for second, 15% debt ratio, 3 income statement made. For third part, look, this is your third part. Again, 3 income statements were made for 30% debt. For fourth part, 45% debt, 3 income statements were made. For fifth part, 60% debt, 3 income statements were made. So it means how many income statements in total we have made? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were options for 3 probabilities. So 15 income statement in single question we have made, and all answers were calculated, and you must be very sure about these answers. All answers, when you will calculate, you will take these answers as your reference. EPS was calculated and number of shares were calculated in each part. Income available for common shareholders were calculated for each part. Now let us decide what to do next. Since we have completed EPS and income statement, only A, B, C, D parts are completed. We need to calculate requirements of E, F, G as well. But since we have taken so much time for single lecture, so this is a suggestion. Instead of calculating next part in the same lecture, let's take the break. And since we have completed our all income statement, next parts are little bit easy, so those would be completed in relatively less time. So let's take the break. This is your 13.27B part. We have completed all income statements are accomplished. Here there is a request. In between this break, when you want to view this next lecture for third part, I'm requesting you to please repeat this part for 3 to 4 times. Though it would be little hectic, but requesting you to please repeat this question for 3 to 4 times, with which your memory would be at the strongest part. 13.27 second part, we are concluding and deciding that remaining part would be solved in next part. So soon we will be looking forward for each other for the solution of C part of 13.27 soon, inshallah. Up till then, please take care of yourself, and I'm requesting you to please pray for me as well. Thank you very much for your time. It's time to say goodbye. Allah Hafiz.